Hey everyone, thanks for joining us at the Culture Drop Podcast. I'm Jed, and I'm joined once again by my co-host, cultural critic and author William Devitz. Today we're going to be talking about Lou Reed. We're going to talk about his bass player, Fernando Saunders. A lot of his albums we're going to touch on, including Live in Italy, New York, Lulu, the first Lou Reed album. We're also going to talk about some of the albums he did with Robert Quine, The Blue Mask, and Legendary Hearts. So sit back and enjoy the podcast.
Lou Reed or Bob Dylan or Joe Strummer or Tom Waits, those guys don't have natural great voices, but they were great singers. He had the great literary voice, as it were.
Yeah. I noticed that there's a new Lou Reed book out recently.
Yeah, I've heard it's the best ever. It's, I forget who wrote it. It's, some hotshot.
Yeah.
I think a guy used to write locally here. Jim DeRogatis, maybe?
Oh yeah, Jim DeRogatis is Chicago.
Yeah, he's Chicago, but I think he wrote for City Pages for a while when they were still Sweet Potato, I think. Well, maybe I'll get that. But he's supposedly very good, the new Lou one.
Will Hermes, is that the one?
Yeah. And he wrote for Rolling Stone, and I think he might have actually written for, he might be a Twin Cities guy.
Okay.
He might be. I could be getting this completely wrong, but yeah, he's a famous writer. I don't know how much more about Lou I need to read. Yeah,
that's kind of what I felt. It's like, yeah, that sounds interesting, but do I want to read another? I kind of want to get his Tai Chi book though.
Oh, he's got a Tai. Maybe I did know that. Yeah.
He kind of collects like all the things he said about Tai Chi over the years.
Oh.
And it's very lovingly put together. I think almost like a coffee table book.
Oh, I thought, it was just like photographs, because he's a big photographer.
No, it's got a lot of text in it too, I think. Because I've heard Laurie Anderson interviewed about it.
Really? Huh. He's got a new album, I think it came out earlier this year. Words and Music, I think it's called. It was up for a Grammy for Best Reissue, archival reissue. The Grammys for a couple days.
The Art of the Straight Line, My Tai Chi, by Lou Reed.
Okay. Yeah, I guess the new album is like demos from '65.
Okay.
Pre Velvet Underground. I don't know if John Cale's on or not, because on that Peel Slowly and See box set, Velvet's box set, there's a disc of demos with him and John.
Okay.
So apparently this is different from that, and I'm not interested. Lou learning how to be Lou,
Yeah.
By trying not to be Bob Dylan, but how can you not be influenced by Bob Dylan if you're a serious songwriter in 1965?
Yeah.
So I got no interest in it.
A while back, I decided I wanted to get a little bit more familiar with like the earliest Lou Reed stuff, like the first album, and it's pretty good, pretty cool.
I think it's very poorly produced, and the sound was very muddy originally. Apparently, it's a simple matter of Richard Robinson, the producer, or the engineers, flipped the Dolby switch, and they ended up pressing that onto vinyl. And it's still not a sparkling sounding album, but it was remastered more recently.
But kind of overlooked in his oeuvre, as you say.
Yeah, it's an odd record. Musically, it just sounds like 1972. It sounds like a combination of CCR, the Stones, country rock.
Yeah.
They're all hotshot British session players. Steve Howe and Rick Wakeman from Yes are on it.
Mm-hmm.
And so and Lou's voice is pretty uncertain
Mm-hmm.
in his actual delivery. It's kind of undermixed and it's uncertain, but the songs are, all 10 of them are great, or all except one are, Velvet's outtakes.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a very underlooked album. That's an album that could really stand, being fully remixed.
Yeah.
Even still, musically, it's just not very interesting. It rocks and rolls and has, Stonesy sounding guitars.
Now, did you listen? Apparently, one of the things Lou Reed before he passed was to oversee the remastering of his entire catalog. Have you listened to those?
No, I haven't. No, it's bloody expensive. I think they were only released on vinyl, I think only as a box set, not as standalone.
Oh, okay.
And it's bloody expensive from what I heard.
Yeah. Did you like the thing he did with Metallica?
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I sold my copy years ago.
I remember it blowing my mind too. Like, this is a freaking cool idea.
It's phenomenally ugly. Everything about it is ugly.
Yeah.
Metallica's an ugly band. I mean, they have their strengths and their power.
A lot of the lyrics are, pretty dark.
The lyrics are extraordinarily ugly. Lou's vocals are extraordinarily ugly. Sometimes it sounds like he's not even playing in the same room.
Yeah. Yeah, he was going for a certain aesthetic, I guess. He did that and moved on.
The last song on it, 21 minutes long, is completely the other story. It's utterly beautiful.
Yeah.
He sounds like Lou Reed actually singing, not shouting out of rhythm and out of with that weird phrasing that he has on most of the rest of the album.
Yeah, I remember, it's kind of like Havana 3 AM. Like, I remember listening to the record and digging it, and then I never listened to it again.
There was a couple songs on it. One called Iced Honey, which sounds like a proper Lou Reed song, 3-chord Lou Reed song with some very poignant lines, even though it's not as ugly as the other ones. And the first song of the album, which is very ugly, but also sounds like a Lou Reed song, like 3 chords. So there was 3 songs, as I recall.
Yeah.
2, which are kind of shorter, the 2 I mentioned. Brandenburg Gate, I think, is the first song on the album. And Iced Honey, and they're both like under 4 minutes long. And then the final song, which is like 21 minutes, and the last like 11 minutes of it are basically, it's a one-note drone.
Oh, okay.
Literally 11 minutes. But the actual song proper sounds like an actual song. It's slow, a slow mid-tempo song. Called, I can't remember what it's called. It's called Junior Dad.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's an ode to his father, who he despised.
Mm-hmm.
And it's very touching and very beautiful. And he should have released not a single, because it's not exactly top 40 material, but an edited version with just the song and not the 11 minutes of one-note drone at the end of it.
Yeah.
Like viola, Lou doing something on his guitar emulator, and some other, maybe Laurie Anderson on electric violin or something. It's not Laurie, but it's just a drone. It goes on forever. So, yeah, and it was adventurous. Apparently he was really sick when they were doing that album.
Oh, was he?
And then he got better for a while. He got the liver transplant. But apparently he was in a lot of pain in doing it. They filmed a thing with Metallica in a small studio club with a live audience, like 100 people, in maybe Hamburg, but somewhere in Germany. And it's on YouTube, playing songs from it, live with Metallica, and they're all standing in a circle.
Yeah.
And Lou does not look good at all. He doesn't look good. He's playing guitar.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell with Lou because he's such a contrarian, crotchety Because then there's an interview with them after the show where they play songs from the album, and the Metallica are all sitting around, and Metallica are inarticulate. Lars Ulrich does most of the talking, and they glad hand Lou and say how great he is, and Lou is cryptic and weird and alternately nasty and alternately childlike in his commentary. So he just got weird as he was old, as he aged.
Yeah, and you never knew what he really thought about things. Like, I've heard 2 different times he's asked about the Beatles, and one time he thought they were great, and another time he said they were terrible.
Right. Supposedly that was the trip with the Velvets. They hated the Beatles, and they hated Frank Zappa and the Mothers, who were on the same record label, record. And of course, who inducted Frank into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame?
Right.
Lou.
Yeah.
And it's actually a pretty good speech.
Yeah.
And his whole thing about he was after the Blue Mask was released, so that's like 82. There's an interview on YouTube, and the guy asked him, so what do you think about British rock? And Lou was like, I don't. What do you mean by that? I don't think they should do it at all.
Right, yeah, I've heard that.
He says he likes Ray Davies and the Stones, and that's it.
Uh-huh.
And this is, 82, and obviously, an internet, associate who's a personal friend of Mick Jones, and he did the Gorillaz thing with Mick and Paul on the same album.
Yeah.
And this guy said Lou met this guy. His name is Jody. He was actually a scriptwriter. He had in a band in the 80s called the Blow Up. They're actually a pretty good band. They released like an album and an EP. And lately he's been a scriptwriter for HBO. I think a TV series from a couple of years ago called 6 Feet Under or something like that.
Yeah. That was a great show.
On that. I never saw it. I didn't have HBO. But his name is Jody. Can't remember his last name. He's a really nice guy. Google the Blow Up and you'll see him near YouTube. And they're actually a pretty cool band.
Okay.
And anyway, so he's personal friends with Mick Jones. Talks to him all the time. Emails or video chat. And he said he met Lou once, and his mom was there, meaning Jody's mom, and Lou was extraordinarily graceful and gracious and just a lovely guy.
Yeah, I've heard him be like that too. It sounds like, he has that side to him if he wants to be.
Yeah, but he said, this Jody said, well, he'd met, Lou earlier, and he wasn't rude to Jody. He was just like rude to everybody else around him.
Yeah. Hey, what do you think about Fernando Saunders' bass playing?
I think it's great. I think he operates, particularly on those first 3 albums he did with Lou.
Yeah.
Blue Mask, Legendary Hearts, and then New Sensations. He operates as a third guitar player.
Oh, interesting.
As well as bass player.
Yeah.
I think wonderful. He's a wonderful musician in general. He came back with Lou after the New York trilogy, the New York album, Magical Loss, and the Andrew Warhol thing, Songs for Drell. And he was in Lou's final band.
Yeah.
And his tone deepened. He was less mid-rangey, and he'd always played a fretless bass.
Yeah.
But he had a deeper tone. Maybe that was something that Lou, impressed upon him. He wanted a heavier bottom. But still very fine, very creative, very fluid, very catchy bass player.
Yeah.
Those first 2 albums he did with Lou and Robert Quine are my 2 favorite Lou albums, probably, and 2 of my favorite albums by anybody. And
which ones?
The Blue Mask from 82 and the follow-up from 83 called Legendary Hearts.
Legendary Hearts, okay.
And it's weird because Quine said some demos, some cassette demos of just him and guitar, which is actually used one of the songs on the album.
Yeah.
And you can even hear the tape hiss. They played the songs like 1 or 2, 3 times and recorded them all live, no overdubs. Lou does one guitar overdub on the whole album, and with live vocals. But then Lou went back and overdubbed the vocals.
Okay.
Quine said most of the takes were in the first or second take.
But the basic heart of the album is they played it together as a band based on the demos.
And none of the guys had ever met each other before. The drummer, who went on to play with Jethro Tull, some iteration of Jethro Tull, Don Perry, the session guy, didn't even know Lou's work that much. Quine is the only one. Fernando is like 17 years old, a guy from, East Detroit, who, played in gospel bands, hardly knew Lou at all. And originally, Quine says that he didn't like Fernando's playing because he's too busy and too mid-rangey.
Yeah.
Came to like him very much. And indeed, on the next album, Legendary Hearts, Fernando's mixed really fucking loud in the mix, and Quine is mixed way down, which really pissed Quine off.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And then, but Fernando, on the second album, the Don Perry guy went on to, play with Jethro Tull, and they got Quine's buddy from Material, Fred Marr, who's a very young, hotshot drummer, producer, ended up producing the New York album years later. And Fernando didn't like Marr's playing, Fred Marr, because he thought he was too simplistic, but it came to appreciate him. So it's funny, these 3 hotshot players, who didn't know each other and didn't know each other's work at all, were suspicious of each other's playing initially, and it being, for my money, one of the greatest guitar bands ever.
Well, that's interesting what you said about Fernando being almost like a third guitar player, because for me, I'm still, the jury's out with me. Like, he's that fretless way of playing, and like the chorus or whatever the effects he puts, like, I could see that like for a song or two, but he does that on every Lou Reed song. But I think if I think of it more like he's filling in the spaces where it needs to be between the guitars, and that's a better way of thinking about that instrument and what he's doing. And he's obviously a great musician.
Yeah, you mentioned chorus. I've never noticed any effects.
And maybe there isn't, but it's just that fretless style of playing.
Well, for my money, he doesn't play in the usual fretless style. People like Jaco Pastorius or some of those,
But you know what I mean. He's got a certain way, like he's playing a fretless bass.
Right. But to me, it's so catchy.
Yeah.
And now that's easy when you're playing simple 3-chord Lou Reed songs. To find catchy things, not just play scales and show off.
Right.
He's not playing scales. He's playing very distinct parts.
Yeah.
And he pulled it off live too. They released a double live album. They toured Europe. Live in Italy is the name of the album.
Yeah.
And it's very raw sounding, no overdubs or anything. In fact, the bass and drums are mixed very low on the album.
Yeah.
But to me, it operates in a very mid-rangey tone. I just like a lot of bass players who do that. Bill Wyman had a very mid-rangey. He played it way up on his neck a lot of the time.
Yeah.
And so you had to turn the records up really loud. That's why Stone's albums early on were engineered with the bass and the kick drum so low in the mix, because they were meant to be party records played on really, really loud volumes on, fancy 70 stereo systems, which were, coming into vogue, really powerful stereos.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Butler's another one. From Big
That's right. He had that kind of sensibility, didn't he?
Particularly on the first 3, maybe 4, but particularly the first 3 Big Country albums, it's very mid-rangey.
Yeah, that's right.
A lot of droning, and a lot of the music, it lends itself to that because a Celtic drive.
Yeah.
But these just little runs, he's working in and out of snaking, Stewart and Bruce's guitar.
Yeah.
It operates almost like a third guitar.
Yeah.
Very catchy, not very bottom end heavy. That's the only bottom end you're going to hear is, Mark's kick drum and his toms. Later on, Big Country, they kind of lost their muse, as Stewart did, and Tony, adopted a more conventional, just bass guitar, sound.
Yeah.
Adam Clayton early on was like that, had a very mid-rangey sound.
Right.
On their first 3 albums, particularly the first 2 albums, Boy and October, a very droning, mid-rangey sound. Steve Lillywhite really played that up.
Yeah.
I love it when bass players can do that, where the guitars are as interesting and catchy and hooky, where the bass is as the guitars or any other instrument.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think of Paul's playing on Bite Your Head Off?
Well, it's very bass. I mean, Paul is my favorite bass player. I mean, he's so melodic. He's such an inventive bass player because he was kind of this creative guy who's kind of forced to play the bass, so he just makes it so melodic. But Bite Your Head Off, I think he was given his orders and he just made to order, play the root note and just have fun with it,
Well, it could be Dee Dee Ramone playing bass on that track.
Yeah. Now, within that, if you really listen, he does get his little fills in there a little bit between the root notes. I think he did a splendid job.
Yeah. How about the solo, though? The fuzz solo.
The solo in Bite Your Head Off?
Yeah, the breakdown. It's a fuzz bass.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
They gave him a Hofner.
Yeah. Now, the Beatles, of course, use the fuzz bass occasionally. So I think that was probably his idea, just to bring something a little more interesting bass-wise to the track. I like that.
Yeah, I was reading about, before I heard it, I was expecting, because apparently it just blew everybody's mind. Keith and Woody were sitting down recording it, and they stood up and played the rest of the song standing up, and everybody hooted and hollered, and apparently it's a real hot take.
Yeah.
It's not really a solo per se. It's just
No.
basic riff.
There's a Beatles song, I think it's Think for Yourself, where he overdubs a fuzz bass in 1965. But can you imagine being in the room, if they were all, according to, I think it was Ronnie, they're all in the room, playing that one live with McCartney. That would have been pretty cool.
Apparently that's what it was. That's what Andrew Watt, the producer, said. Nobody was expecting it, Paul came in, it's like, oh, hey, how you doing, mate? And everybody, like that. Oh, you want to play on a track? Oh, yeah, I'm playing a track. Okay, here's, almost like a 3-chord song, whatever. And Paul didn't know. And the producer, Andrew Watt, gave him this Hofner as like a Christmas present, this birthday present or something. And Paul was like, I already have my old Hofner. And it's like, no, you don't know about this. And it had, a built-in, just flip the switch.
Oh.
To an outboard effects pedal.
Oh, I see.
And apparently, Paul was like, wow, this is the coolest thing, wow. And so nobody knew when they were actually doing that take, or the first take that Paul used it on, when it came to the breakdown, that Paul was going to flip the switch. He didn't have to go over, what's that for.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's interesting.
So apparently, right there in real time, everybody in the room, and Steve Jordan said this too. I guess it was really, really loud,
Yeah.
And, it's a fun song, nothing to write home about. It's just a fun, funky song, could have been from some girls,
Right.
Did you watch the thing, the brief interview with Bill Wyman?
No. Did you email that to me?
Yeah, a couple of days ago. He's got a new book about a new memoir, Billy in the Wars, as it's called. It's got one of those classic British boys.
Oh, Bill Wyman in the War. Okay, I'll pull this up right now and I'll watch it tonight.
Yeah, it's like 15 minutes long. It's just somebody him promoting his new book, just talking about growing up really impoverished during World War II. He was older than the other guys by a good 6
That's right.
years.
No, good. I'm glad you mentioned that because I remember seeing that when you sent it, and I made a note. Oh, I'll have to watch that tonight, and then I forgot to watch it. So, I'll.
Yeah, he's an interesting dude.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
He just turned 87, and
God bless him.
Sharp as hell, and you know, he was the only real poor boy, and he was as poor as the Beatles were in Liverpool. You know, Mick and Keith were staunchly middle class. Brian was upper middle class.
Yeah.
Bill and Charlie were the only, real, actual poor, working class guys in the Stones.
Oh, that's interesting. You know, John had a song called "Working Class Hero," and he was actually living in the upper middle class posh area with his aunt in Liverpool.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
I thought
right across from a golf course.
He's a phony. He's a poser.
So you kind of like the Joe Strummer syndrome, right? Where he was going across to the embassies and talking like Joe.
Right.
It was that kind of thing.
Joe, for the first, couple of years of the Clash, and even on the first album, on the second album too, this Cockney accent he put on,
Right.
Why?
Yeah.
But he talked that way too in interviews. Yeah,
right. Yeah, he was talking that way in Rude Boy.
He's living in London.
Like right now, I can't give you a job.
Right, but the thing is, his natural voice, when he started talking like, Joe Strummer, later John Miller, it's kind of this indeterminate accent. It's almost like Bob Dylan's accent. Like, where's Bob Dylan? Where's his accent? He made it up. He invented it.
Yeah,
but Joe,
transatlantic.
He was born in Turkey. And then he lived in Mexico City, and then he lived in Morocco. This is before he set foot in England.
Right. Well, that's kind of like Stuart Copeland of the Police. His dad worked for the CIA, and he grew up in Beirut. But he has a very strong American accent.
Yeah, but his dad was American.
You're right. Exactly. That's right.
But okay. Joe's dad was British. His grandma was Scottish, but Joe has his natural voice. You hear, voice, before he died, and with the mescaleros and whatnot. You can't tell I haven't traveled in England enough to know. You know a lot more.
You can tell he's English though.
Huh?
You can tell he's English. You just couldn't say what area of England he's from.
Right. Or even London. Is this North London, like Richard Butler?
Oh, okay.
It's like, where is it? South London, like Mick Jones? Is it?
Yeah.
What part? Certainly it's English. It's not Welsh. It's not Scottish. It's not Northern Irish. It's not Irish. But it's kind of this vague accent.
Yeah. That's an interesting point.
Yeah, and it's a very good accent. Joe really put on the Cockney thing, the working class thing, in the Clash's early days. And, God love him, more power to him. I wouldn't want people to know that my dad was a diplomat either.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, thanks for listening to Culture Drop. We hope you enjoyed that episode of our podcast about Lou Reed and some other interesting topics. If there's certain topics that you'd like to have us discuss, feel free to drop us a comment. We're always happy to hear from our listeners. And we've got lots of exciting plans for upcoming shows. Stay tuned, and we'll catch you on the next one.